In this video, you will see what is the top 10 must-have units in Anime Vanguards Update 8.5. Every units in this video are all obtainable. I do want to know, what do you think is the best unit in Anime Vanguards Update 8.5? Remember to subscribe and like. And with that being said, in no particular order, the first must-have unit is Wolf Resurrection. Stark is one of the newest world-line secret unit, and he became one of the best support in this new Anime Vanguards Update 8.5. Wolf Resurrection stats at max upgrade and max LR, 40,740 damage with his SP at 7.3 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,614. Coyote's first passive. When this unit hits an enemy, they become marked. This unit spawns 2 wolves every 10 seconds who attack the marked enemies. His second passive, Primero. Anytime this unit attacks an enemy who is already marked, the attack is guaranteed to crit. His third passive, Resurrection. Anytime this unit crits an enemy, follow up with attack 1 for 60% damage and applies 50% slow for 20 seconds, which is insanely busted. Alright, next unit is Yihawwok Almighty. Yihawwok is still one of the strongest secret unit with his passives as he becomes full AoE and later upgrades. Yihawwok Almighty stats at max upgrade and max LR, 28,120 damage with his SP at 9.2 seconds, making his damage per second at 3,056, which is great, especially he becomes full AoE at later upgrades. Yihawwok Almighty has 3 passives. His first passive, the Almighty. The Almighty, immune to all status ailments, increases his damage by 5% for every status ailment avoided up to 30%. His second passive, the Man Who Saw the Future. When this unit attacks, it will do an additional attack on the last enemy in range at the same time. This will only apply if the first and last enemy are different. His third passive, Ash Fallen, gains an active ability which increases his range by 5% every time Ash Fallen is used, up to 20%. When activating the ability, it switches between 2 toggles. Toggle 1 buffs all units in range by 15% and damage and lose 30% attack from this unit. Although his toggle 2 will debuff all allied units in his range by 20% damage and 10% range, and gain 10% damage and 5% range per allied unit who is debuffed from this ability. How to get Yihawwok is from the rift, where he is a 2% chance to get, so good luck on who is grinding for this unit. Okay, next unit is Gojo Infinity. Gojo got a buff when equipping his new familiar, making him insanely meta with his overpowered stats in this new Anime Vanguards Update 8.5. Gojo Infinity stats at max upgrade and max LR, 173,850 damage with his SP at 9.9 seconds, making his damage per second at 57,701. Gojo's Vanguard familiar passives are: when an enemy leaves this unit's range, activates Void for 2 seconds and fires Attack 3 on that enemy. Increases Gojo's damage by 250% and damage boost from Void stays active for 30 seconds after activation, making Gojo insanely meta and putting him back into the meta. Alright, next unit is Sunjin and Igros. Sunjin is one of the strongest Vanguard unit with his crazy passive summons and nukes. Sunjin and Igros stats at max upgrade and max LR, 232,630 damage with his SP at 6.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 36,303. Sunjin and Igros have 3 passives. His first passive, the Army Supply. This unit has a mana bar. Anytime this unit spawns a summon, this unit will lose 40% of its total mana, and anytime an enemy is defeated, this unit gains 2% of their total mana. And anytime a mana is lost, its damage will be buffed by 0.5% up to 30%. His second passive, the General. Anytime an allied summon dies in this unit's range, increases his damage by 5% up to 50%. This increase is reset after this unit attacks. If none of the units summoned are on the track, this unit will gain 20% more range and 30% more damage. His third passive, the Monarch. This unit summons gain additional health based on the percentage of mana remaining after their summoning. Between upgrades, Sunjin will be able to nuke enemies with his 3 abilities, although it is only one time use per game, which you will have to use wisely. And between upgrades, Sunjin you will be able to manually summon 4 different summons, which are all insanely meta, and you can summon them again when they are dead. Okay, next unit is Brawlzy Super Wrathful. Brawly is the newest Vanguard unit added, and he became one of the strongest Vanguard unit with his passive and ability in this new Anime Vanguards Update 8.5. Brawlzy Super Wrathful stats at max upgrade and max LR, 51,270 damage with his SP at 9.6 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,366. Broly's first passive, Quick Learner. Any crit this unit has over 100% gets converted to crit damage. Instead, every wave this unit gains 5% crit rate up to 95%. Anytime this unit crits, cleanses itself of debuffs, has a 50% crit rate on placement. This is lost on his first upgrade. His second passive, anytime this unit crits, he does attack 3 and buffs own damage by 50%. When this unit does the attack 3, it will inflict rupture, which will make enemies no longer have regen. His third passive, anytime this unit crits, reduces the cost of the next upgrade by 2%. If this unit attacks an enemy and does not crit, follow up with attack 1 and buffs damage by 50% for 60 seconds. On placement, Broly has an ability, Wrathful Clash. While this ability is active, increase crit rate by 20% per wave for all units that by default have the Unbound element up to 100%. Up to 7 waves, said units start gaining 10% crit damage per wave. Alright, next one is the Struggler Rampage. Guts is one of the strongest with his passives and stats. The Struggler Rampage stats at max upgrade and max LR, 401,000 damage with his SPA at 7.2 seconds, making his damage per second at 55,810. On placement, Guts has an ability called Berserker Armor. When this ability is toggled on, Guts will attack non-stop and gain full status effect and debuff immunity, although once reached 20 injury stacks, he will be stunned a minute, although with his passive it lets him apply bleed for 20% of his damage for 10 seconds while being stunned. Like, isn't that a bit OP? Okay, next one is the Smith. Smith is still one of the best support as he will increase units damage by 25% or range by 20% or reduces their SPA by 10%. At max upgrade, you can activate Masterworks, which only one of each masterwork can exist at a time. First one is Dragon Slayer, increases the damage by 40% and increase the damage dealt by DOTs by 20%. Second one is Salamander Dagger, increase range by 20% and increase damage dealt to burning enemies by 20%. Third one is Dragon's Great Shield, makes ally immune to status effects. Fourth one is Sword of Actuation, reduces SPA by 10% and increase the damage by 20%. Alright, next one is Esganor Pride. Esganor is one of the best Vanguard unit with his passive and abilities. Esganor Pride stats at max upgrade, max buff, and max LR. 1.19 million damage with his SP at 7.1 seconds, making his damage per second at 166,855. Esganor's first ability, Lion Sin. When activated, Esganor will deal 400% damage to every enemy in range and can only be used once per match per player. Esganor's second ability, Ultimate. When activated, he sets himself to 12-hour stack and gains 50% damage and can no longer lose hour stack, although after 5 waves, this unit will sell itself but can be placed again. Esganor's first passive, the one above all. Once the pre-match screen, the player can select to burn unit slots. For every slot that is burnt or empty slot, permanently gain 1 hour stack. If all units are burned or you have no other units equipped, this unit will upgrade itself every wave and becomes free to place. His second passive, High Noon. For every wave that passes, this unit gains 1 hour stack. For every stack, this unit gains 15% damage and 1.5% range, while at 12 stacks, this unit gains 30% more damage and all enemies in range get inflicted with burn for 2% of this unit damage for 5 seconds. Once hitting 12 stacks every wave, lower stack count by 1. His last passive, Sunshine. Attacks inflict burn for 30% of this unit's damage for 5 seconds. If an enemy leaves this unit's range, this unit will inflict that enemy with burn for 100% of this unit's damage for 5 seconds. Anytime this unit inflicts burn on an enemy, cleanses all debuffs and status effects from itself. Okay, next one is Eizen Aura. Eizen is still one of the strongest Seeker, with him being immune to all status elements as he becomes fully UE and gets an ability at later upgrades. Eizen Aura stats at max upgrade and max LR. 52,390 damage with his SP at 10 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,226, which is insanely good, especially he becomes fully UE at later upgrades. Eizen Aura's first passive, Aura. He will be immune to all status ailments. Every enemy within 40% of this unit's range takes DOT damage, scaling from 1% to 80% of this unit's damage based on how close they are to this unit. His second passive, Complete Hypnosis. Anytime a health stock is removed, forces every enemy on the map to walk backwards for 5 seconds and lessens his SPA by 5% per health stock missing. And his third passive, Dabo Mastery. gains active Dabo 81. Every enemy stopped by Dabo 81 increases the damage conversion of aura by an additional 2% of the duration of the ability. Alright, next one is Lord Friezo Emperor. Frieza is one of the newest mythical banner unit added, and he became one of the strongest DPS with his summoning and passives in this new anime Vanguards update 8.5. Lord Friezo Emperor stats at max upgrade and max LR, 78,060 damage with its SP at 5.3 seconds, making his damage per second at 14,666. Frieza's first passive, the Emperor's Army. This unit can place up to 3 minions per placement of this unit. His second passive, Lord Friezo. This unit gains effects based on minions placed for every 3 alien cadet, increases his damage by 15%, and if 3 are placed, summons 1 ally cadet for 100% damage. For every alien soldier placed, increases range by 10%, and if 3 are placed, this unit's minions becomes immune to debuffs and status effects. For every alien elite placed, increases damage by 5%. If 3 are placed, this unit gains 40% damage and 20% range. Wow. Okay, next one is Super Vegito. Vegito is one of the best units with his passive and stats at later upgrades. Super Vegito stats at max upgrade and max LR. 234,570 damage with his SP at 3.9 seconds, making his damage per second at 60,668. Vegito's first passive, the strongest fusion, on entry gains 100% more damage for 40 seconds, and once 40 seconds have elapsed, gain 20% more damage, decreases his SPA by 20%, and increases range by 20%, and attacks ignore enemy dodge chance. His second passive, alright. If an enemy would attack an ally, it attacks this unit instead. Anytime this unit is attacked, increases range by 3% up to 30%. His attacks also inflict rupture, which permanently removes regen, makes him great against regeneration enemies. His third passive, enough. Attack will ignore 50% of enemy damage reduction. Anytime an enemy attacks or applies status effect on this unit, he will perform a counter attack on that enemy. Alright, next one is Smith John. Sid is one of the strongest units with his passive and nuke abilities. Smith John stats at max upgrade and max LR, 24,020 damage with his SP at 4.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,522. Smith John's first passive, dramatic entry. This unit gains a gauge. On attack, the gauge fills up by 12.5%. Once this gauge is filled up, this unit can then press the unlocked active ability to swap to its counterpart. On entry, damages all enemies in range by 40% off this unit's damage and buffs damage by 40% for 30 seconds. His second passive, Undercover Agent, gains the unknown element. On attack, if this unit has already attacked that enemy, it increases the damage of that attack by 5% and it stacks, which is insanely meta against bosses. His last passive, a Welcome Challenge. If the enemy has more health than this unit's damage, this unit will deal 40% more damage. Finally, the last unit is Lord of Shadows. Sid is still one of the strongest seekers with his passive and ability. Lord of Shadows stats at max upgrade and max level and max buff are 57,650 damage with his SP at 7.1 seconds, making his damage per second at 8,133. Lord of Shadows' first passive, dramatic entry. This unit gains a gauge. On attack, the gauge fills up by 12.5%. Once the gauge is filled up, this unit can then press the unlocked active ability to swap to its counterpart. On entry, damages all enemies in range by 150% of this unit's damage and buffs range by 30% for 30 seconds. His second passive, Lord of Shadows, whenever this unit gets a takedown on an enemy, gains 0.5% damage up to 100% and more range by 0.25% up to 50%, and this buff are lost on swap. His last passive, Overpower. This unit is immune to debuffs, increases damage dealt to the enemy based on the percentage of their missing HP. Lord of Shadows at later upgrades gets an ability All Range Atomic. When activating, it will deal 50% times of the amount of swaps this unit has done in damages to all enemies in range, which resets on use. This has a global cooldown of 180 seconds. That was everything for this video on the top 10 must-have units in Anime Vanguards Update 8.5. I hope this video helped you in some sort of way. Remember to subscribe and like, and I will see you in my next one. Bye bye!